Hi, and you're very welcome to the Women's National League podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. My name is Breifne Earley. It's episode 11, and I'm joined once again by Meabh.discusses to run over all of the results of last weekend and preview what's coming up over the next weekend as well. Meabh, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me again, Breifne.
It's great to have you back. We're seeing lots of you on the podcast over the last few weeks. In terms, probably more than we would have if you were playing in the actual league yourself. You're spending more time on the show. Did you get a chance to watch any games over the weekend? Anything take your fancy?
Yeah, I watched the highlights and the goals of all the games. Obviously, with Galway not playing, I wasn't as glued to the live stream as I normally would be. But there was a lot of good quality goals all the same.
Yeah, you took a weekend off, the same as the Galway girls. Let's take a run through the games, because I know we've kind of looked through the highlights of the weekend and what's happened. But let's actually start with the continued league leaders, Peamount United, in action Saturday evening in Greenogue. They had Athlone Town as their visitors. And the funny thing was, there's two Leitrim players. I'm from Leitrim, obviously. There's two Leitrim players in the league. And for me, I thought the funniest thing was within 5 seconds, they'd never faced each other before, just because it's Murren's first year in the league. And within 5 seconds, a massive collision. The two of them just decided, I'm challenging for that ball. Great to see the fighting spirit. But it was Peamount, I suppose, that had the last laugh. Murren might have won the header that time, but it was actually Dervla and Peamount that had the last laugh. They ran out 6-0 winners, fairly comfortable in the end. But at the same time, some green shoots there for Athlone, very solid for the first maybe 50, 60 minutes before the wheels kind of came off when Sabhdh Doyle got her second goal just after the halftime break.
Yeah, I think, like I said there, Athlone would have been pleased, I suppose, to go in at half-time, only 1-0 down. And, on the flip side, then Peamount would have been very happy with the second half and how they were so clinical. But it was great, like I mentioned previously, just to see Sabhdh as well doing well, because she obviously moved up to Peamount from Galway last year, and she's been given an opportunity in the last couple of games. I think she's pushed further forward now as well, and it was great to see her on the score sheet again twice last week. So I think like that, it was a dominant display really from Peamount, and Athlone could only hold them for so long until it was inevitable really that Peamount ran out the winners.
Yeah, I suppose we're well used to big names at Peamount, particularly in the attacking areas of the field. We know Steph, we've had Anya on the show, but also over the years, Amber Barrett, Sarah Lawler, they've always had players who can find the back of the net. Tell us a bit about Sabhdh, because Sabhdh might not be as well known as the other girls. You've obviously played with her in Galway. What's your assessment of where she might take her career?
She's just a quality player, really. I actually coached her as well, which makes me feel quite old for a couple of years.
You're taking credit for her being so good then,
Not at all. She was born with so much natural talent. I don't think she needed to be coached that much, and it was only for a short spell I was helping out. But she just, with under 19s, she actually played defensive role. She played centre back. They used to play three at the back, and she played predominantly most of her underage career as a defender with the Irish team. But for us with Galway, she normally played as the link-up player, as number 10, and at times up front as well. But she's always very creative, and I think sometimes when you see her at the back, it's nearly you almost think it's a waste, because she has so much talent. In the final third of the pitch, obviously in the last couple of games with Peamount, that's been displayed by her as well, her attacking prowess going forward.
Yeah, I suppose looking down through the score sheet, it was probably around the hour mark when Peamount kind of cut loose. Tegan Ruddy on 65 minutes, and then Megan Smith-Lynch and Anya Gorman, two more over the next 5 or 6 minutes in the game. It was never really in doubt once the second goal went in, but I think Peamount, they just have that clinical edge. Of course, late goal from sub Orla Fitzpatrick as well, rounded it off 6-0. Is it scary that over the last 2 weekends, Peamount have rotated their squad substantially? There's a lot of players who maybe wouldn't have had as much game time up to this. The likes of Della Doherty breaking into that team. Sabhdh, you mentioned. A few others in there as well who wouldn't be necessarily automatic starters in that team, and yet they're still going out and really putting teams to the sword.
Definitely. I mean, also you can add Tegan and Dora to that, who wouldn't have been starters before the season, but obviously it can be starters in their own right. They're both quality players. So I think, to be honest, at this stage now, James and Vinny will have an awful difficult job, I think, to decide on their starting 11 and, who they feel will be the best starting 11 on a particular day. But obviously that's a great luxury to have, and maybe depending on the opposition they're up against, and they might feel that different players are more worthy to start. And like we mentioned previously as well, the goalkeepers with Nisha has been performing very well in the last couple of games as well. So it's difficult decisions for the management, but sure, that's the decisions, I suppose, of management, or the headaches that they want to have in every game, really.
Yeah, two quality goalkeepers, as you mentioned. I feel almost a bit it's slightly unfair almost on both of them, in that they're going to end up, they've both got 2 clean sheets. Meabh has 2 clean sheets from the 2 games she's played, and Nisha has, I think, 2 from, I'm not quite sure how many games they played. They both have 2 clean sheets, but I think Nisha might have played an extra game. But they've almost kind of, they could be deprived. I think last year they were deprived of actually potentially challenging for the Golden Gloves, if you want to call it, because they split the games between them. And they maybe don't get the credit they deserve within the league, because when you look at the list at the end of the year, they're 3rd and 4th, rather than maybe one of them been out first, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean, I suppose it must be slightly frustrating maybe, but at the same time, you always hear of goalkeeper unions and that. And I think often goalkeepers, when they're training together, it's just the nature of the position that I think they often do have good relationships between them, good working relationships, because they go through, I suppose, things that the rest of the team don't go through. When you see the training, often, for a training, looking over at the keepers, you'd have to question why sometimes they put themselves through it. But I think, they probably, like I said, they work so well together, and I think they're bringing out the best in each other, really, because they both know that they have to perform, at 100% in every game, or they'll lose their starting spot. And I think that can't be said about most of the other teams in the league. While they have, they probably do have competition between the posts, I don't think they would have it at the same level as Peamount.
Yeah, you can't really beat that competitive nature of knowing you have to stay ahead of someone who's every bit as good as you. So it's good. As you said, it's a good problem for the management at Peamount to have. Shells, of course, keeping in pace with them. They find themselves now on 12 points after 5 games. Wexford, of course, in 2nd place. We'll start with Shells. They made the trip down to Limerick to face Treaty on Sunday afternoon. Result never really in doubt. 2 early goals in the first half. They had Noel Murray got the first well-worked move involving a dummy with Saoirse Noonan, and then a penalty. Noel Murray dubious enough about whether it was in the penalty box or not. Treaty say no. Shell's quite happy to take and convert the spot kick. From there on in, given the form coming in, Treaty were never really going to get back into that game. 3 second-half goals killed it. 5-0 the final score. Jess Stapleton getting her first goal of her senior career. That's a nice little cherry on the top of the performance for her, I suppose.
For sure, yeah. She's been a player, I think, that's really impressed this season. She's slotted in beside Pearl at centre-back, and I think she's shown a lot of maturity, just given how young that she is. I think it was great to see her. It was a very good header from Noel had put the ball in from the corner. And I think, while we have the youth of, say, Jessie there, and you also have like that Noel, who's been around the block now, and she's still contributing a lot. Like, she got the 2 goals, and like I said, she put the corner in as well. So I think they have the right blend there at Shells at the moment, and like you had mentioned there as well, Saoirse Noonan's dummy, I thought, for the goal was really good as well. Just shows a lot of creativity and that side as well. So I think dominant display by Shells, and like you had said, it wasn't really in doubt once they got the first goal.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed watching Shells play. They really do have a really nice style. I think we've said that on the show ad nauseum, but they really are probably my favourite side to watch in the league. Interesting to see how that works out for them as the season progresses. Of course, we mentioned in 2nd place in the league table after the weekend's action is, of course, Wexford. They have 1 game further played than everybody else. They've played 6. Everyone else around them has played 5. They have 2 goals from Aoibheann Clancy, 1 after a quarter of an hour, 1 just after half-time from Sinead Taylor, and then a late goal from Aoibheann Clancy. Sarah McKevitt, her first goal for Cork after her move from Peamount in the closed season. To be happy enough results, get out of Cork, 3 points in the bag, keep the pressure on the top, well, the two sides around them at the top of the table?
For sure. I mean, Cork is a really difficult place to go, and like I was saying last week, I thought that Cork had a really good chance of getting a result against Wexford, and obviously just Wexford's experience showed on the day, and I suppose just like Jess Stapleton at Shells, it was great to see as well. Aoibheann Clancy, another young up and coming player, really dominate and get her name on the score sheet twice as well. So it's really testament to Wexford, who are, like we had mentioned, they are probably the oldest, I would imagine, squad in the league, but then they also have those quality players, like we always, I suppose, would be mentioning Malloy in that category, and Clancy has just showed as well that she's right up there, been able to do well against all the teams in the league.
And I suppose it does need to be mentioned as well. Sinead Taylor on the show last week on the score sheet this weekend. That seems to be a recurring theme over the last couple of weeks. I know Jess Gleason scored the week after we had her on, and it's not once off. So maybe a message to players: maybe you need to come and have a chat with us and get on the show, and you'll be guaranteed to score next week. So we're always happy to hear from players and clubs who want to get a little bit of profile and obviously the associated glory when they score in their next game. At the final game of the weekend, DLR Waves in Belfield Bowl, Bohemians, Dublin derby of sorts. Not the one I suppose we're traditionally used to talking about in the Women's National League, but for me it was the game of the weekend. It was probably the two most evenly matched pairings coming into the weekend, and it probably played out that way as well. 1-0, controversial just before halftime, a long-range effort, or long-range cross maybe from Shauna Carroll. What happened after that, it's kind of up to everyone's kind of own interpretation of it. Ended up with everybody getting bundled across the line and the goal being given. Was it a free out? Was it a goal? The ref gave a goal. That's kind of all that matters.
That's it, exactly. Unfortunately, from a goals perspective, it was 1-0 and no points. And obviously from DLR's a massive result to be able to, I suppose, have another 3 points to add to their tally. Like we've been mentioning numerous times, they are really pushing on this season, and these results, although on paper 1-0 might seem great, it is the 3 points that matters at this stage of the season, and they're starting to break away. You can see now a little bit in the league table, they are pulling away from up towards the top half of the league, and I think Bows will be incredibly disappointed not to have gotten anything out of the game, because they really put in a great performance the weekend.
Yeah, the league table is really beginning to take shape, and I suppose we're in that, we've spoken about it before, but we're in that situation where some teams have played 5 and some teams have played 6. So we'll just take a quick run down through the league table. Peamount on top, 5 games played, 15 points. Wexford in second place, 13 points from their 6 fixtures played so far. Shells 12 from 5. DLR also 10 from also 5, should I say. Galway Women's FC 8 points from their 5 games. Cork 5 from 6, and then Bows 4 and Athlone 2 from their 5 games, while Treaty adrift at the moment, 2 points from their opening 6 games. I do like that there are positive results there for everybody, and at least 2, like there's nobody been completely left at the bottom, but you can see that kind of gap starting to appear a little bit. I think possibly even 2 or 3 divisions within the division itself. You've got Peamount, Wexford, Shells, traditionally the strongest 3 teams in recent years anyway. They're starting to pull away a little bit. DLR, Galway, and even to a lesser extent Bows, given the game in hand, probably the next 3 with Cork, Athlone and Treaty a little bit behind that. Cork might not be happy to be in that grouping, but I suppose the results so far and the goal difference in particular would indicate that that's probably where they sit in the league table at the moment.
I think, like you mentioned there, Cork would probably be the ones who are most disappointed with how the league table is currently standing, and rightly so. I think they have had I've mentioned again a lot of times that their performances have been good, but their results just haven't matched it at all. So I think, because the league is so long, it does give teams ample opportunity to make sure that at the end of the season, when the league table is finally done and over, that where they are standing in the table is where they deserve to be. And they always say at the end of the season the league table never lies, and that's obviously true. Your position at the end of the season is where your performances have put you. So I think Galway and DLR, I think the next few weeks is going to be vital to see, can they push that into the top 5, or is it going to end up the same old story as other seasons where it's just a top 3 standing on their own by the end of the season, or even by the midpoint of the season. I think it all will be a lot clearer after the first full round of games is complete, because then at least all teams will have even games played and everyone will have played each other once. I think it'll be a bit clearer then, and we'll be able to assess it maybe even a bit more.
I have to say, though, because it feels like I'm just negging on Cork every single week, that's not the case at all. I think I've been very impressed by some of their individual performances so far. Becky Casson looks solid in the middle of the field. She's involved in everything good they do. Also, the youngsters, Abby McCarthy, Ava Mangan, Kelly Lee have impressed me. Sarah McKevitt's looked decent. She got on the score sheet last week, but she's looked lively, and kind of Lauren O'Bonnelly on the right wing as well has been a threat in every game I've seen her play. So I think it's going to click for Cork, and when it does, I think they're going to start picking up points from the teams all around them, and I can see them really challenging DLR, Galway, and being part of that, and Bows. I think that's going to be that kind of middle ground, and any one of them, if it really clicks and they get their act together, I think could push on and challenge Wexford and maybe the other two as well, for that maybe 4th and 3rd spot. I think it's definitely within reach for some of those clubs, and I think they'll believe it, and I think if they believe it, they can go on and achieve it. In terms of the actual show, that's the results from last weekend. I know we'll talk about the fixtures later on, but let's have a chat with some of our guests. Now, on the show over the last couple of weeks, we have talked about the Under-19 League, but we haven't really scratched at the surface of what that is and what it means for the players in the league. We all know about the 17s that came on stream back in 2018 to fit alongside the senior sides, but for the first time this year, we're going to have a grade between those two. Under-19, and to join us to talk about that is former senior manager, league-winning manager, Laura Heffernan, who won the league with Wexford. She was under-17 manager at Shelbourne for the last couple of seasons, and this time she takes up the reins with DLR Waves in the Under-19 League for this season ahead. Laura, you're very, very welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you here. Maybe let's talk about yourself first before we get into the actual project, because I think from the introduction, you've been around the league, you're well experienced, you've had success virtually everywhere you go. Let's maybe talk about the time at Wexford and I suppose how that came about and your time down there resulted in that league win, which I'm sure you're very happy to look back on.
Yeah, look, I mean, to be involved with my hometown club and obviously represent Wexford in the league and at a European stage as well, it was a very proud time for me. Went in there as a player at the start of the National League, played 2 seasons for John Flood, and from there, when John stepped down and the new manager came in, I happened to work with Will on a few FAI programs, and I was still a player at the time technically, but kind of went in as a player coach role. Didn't last very long. Obviously, it's a very hard thing to juggle doing both. So decided to focus on the coaching side of things, and yeah, we had 2 really successful seasons, a couple of league titles and the FAI Cup. I kind of stepped away, then I went to America for a year, and when I came back, went back to Wexford then for another season in 2017, and we won the title there that season as well. So.
Yeah, because I suppose when you think about it, now obviously we know Wexford as a team that have challenged at the top of the league for the last decade or so, really from the start. They've been competitive, but in the grand scheme of things, when you look at soccer in the country, you don't expect Wexford to compete. How much harder, given now your experience with the sides in the capital, whether it's Shells or DLR, how much harder is it to be competitive with a regional team, with a team from the provinces?
I think at the start of the league, we were a very different type of team. Obviously, your Raheenis and those Dublin teams, technically excellent. Very very good footballers. And we had good footballers in Wexford, no doubt. But we probably just weren't at that same level, and we had to build a bit of a foundation down there before we could start really competing and winning games. So it was just about making ourselves hard to beat. Coming together as a team more, because a lot of other teams would have been, I suppose, club teams, whereas we were a new team that was put together for the National League. So it took a couple of seasons for that to gel. Obviously, the coaches and the management that were there for those 2 seasons done a fantastic job, getting to that level where in the third season, we were ready to start competing for trophies.
Yeah, and of course, it's just over the years, Wexford have just grown and grown and grown through that. Your time down there finished, as you mentioned, in 2017. You made the move to Shells. Why would, and I'm just asking this in general, why would a National League winning manager look to go in as the under 17 coach in a brand new group of girls that she's not familiar with? What was the attraction to that particular role at the time?
Obviously, things just didn't work out in 2017 in Wexford for various reasons, and it was a fresh start for me just to try something different. I'd always kind of been involved in Wexford with Gainer Cup squads and those underage teams as well. So I enjoyed that kind of age group, developing players and trying to help players step on to the next level. There would have been a lot of those Wexford Gainer Cup players that went on to play National League, and for me it was a new challenge, and especially going up to Dublin, like I said, it's a little bit of a different culture than what I would have been used to in Wexford. So for me as a coach, it was a new challenge that I just thought it'd be good for me to help develop as well.
Yeah, and that Shells under 17 side was jam packed full of players that were quite familiar with from the National League. And now Emily Whelan was in that team. Rebecca Cook, who I think has moved to the States on a
Yeah,
scholarship, was in that team. Mia Dodd, was she in that squad too?
she was. Yeah, yeah,
Courtney Maguire in goals. It was a really impressive team. I know we faced you twice when I was involved with Sligo. We went to Talca Park. I think you beat us 2-1 and you beat us 1-0
that's
down
right.
in
Yeah,
Sligo as well. You just had that edge on us. Like we were kind of the analogy you talked about with Wexford. We kind of had to try and put up with the technical skill that was coming out of that team at the time. And you were just really, really impressive and really nice to watch, as most Shells teams are. You spent 3 years there. What were the highlights for you with that group of players as they moved through to the senior side?
obviously the first season to win the league was fantastic, and it was something I always said to the girls that treasure any national league, whatever age group it's at, because you don't know when the next one might come along. Young players, when they're successful, they think this is great, it might last forever, but as it progresses, to win trophies is very difficult. So it was the one thing I said to them after that first season, was to enjoy it and have pride in what they had done, because it's not always easy to carry that forward. But for me to see all those girls, like you mentioned, Emily and Jess, who played a couple of games for us in that season. Olida Griffin, Nicole Kehoe, they're all with DLR now playing senior football. So that's the biggest thing for me, is that all of those girls have progressed on, and they're playing in the senior league now, and do great jobs for whatever team they're with.
Yeah, which of course brings us nicely to the under 19 grade. Now, I think we've all kind of, anyone who's been following the league over the last 3 or 4 years since that under 17 grade came in, can see the gulf between under 17 and senior. And the players who've come through, really, some of them come in ready, but very, very few. And they're just missing that little bit of extra added experience, or just that step between the two grades. The arrival of the under-19s, I know it was talked about maybe a year or two ago. It didn't happen, just maybe through lack of interest. It looks like it's going to go ahead this year. It's all set up to go. What do we know about actual specifics? Have the FAI come out with any hard and fast information on who's going to be involved, what the format of it is going to be?
At the moment, we don't have any kind of start dates or anything like that. We actually went back training last night for the first time, so I think just to see the smiles on the girls' faces instead of looking at us on Zoom calls and doing their own running and stuff like that. So it was fantastic just to get them back on the pitch. From what I'm aware, it's kind of towards the end of June maybe that we might be back playing competitive games. The format, again, we're assuming it'll be similar to the 17s setup. I think personally, I don't think it was a lack of interest a couple of years ago. I think it might have just been a little bit too early. If we had a went that, I think that first or second season, maybe that pool of players might not have been there. Whereas now, we've had 2 years of that 17s age group. All of those players are now looking to keep playing football at a national league level. And like you said, it takes a very good, a special player to come through and break straight into a first team. So yeah, so the likes of Emily Whelan and them, they're phenomenal players, and to be able to break straight into a first team, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. It doesn't happen very often. You've maybe the likes of Ella Malloy, obviously Emily, and a couple of others, to go in and play a regular first team football. It's very difficult. So I think the 19s league now will be brilliant for those girls to be able to progress at maybe a little bit of a slower pace, where there's not as much kind of weight on their shoulders to go into first team football.
Of course, DLR Waves intrinsically linked with the UCD, even if they've dropped the UCD from their name. They're based there. Where are DLR Waves under 19s going to be playing? Are you in UCD as well?
Yeah, we're training in UCD. Games they might move around a little bit just based on availability of pitches and things like that. But yeah, hopefully we will get to play a couple of games in the bowl. Obviously, it's a fantastic venue and it'll be a great experience for the girls to get some football in there.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite venues. I just like how it's stand on one side and then just nature almost around it. In terms of, I suppose, the link with the university itself, though, is there still a link up with the college side, with the scholarship program? Can your age group in particular avail of that? Or is that something that's reserved maybe for the senior players within the club?
Yeah, I think obviously there's ongoing talks just in relation to that partnership. Obviously it's not something I know a whole lot about at the moment, having just come into the club, but I do know that there are strong links there, even if it's not an official one at the moment. So yeah, hopefully that can keep progressing. I think for the league itself to have those links with the colleges, universities it's vital just to, I suppose, to give those players more of a reason to stay in the country and stay with their national league clubs, that they have that education kind of link there. It's not a pet hate for me, but it does disappoint me to see so many, really, really good players leave the country, whether it's for American scholarships or, whatever. So, to grow those links and have new avenues for those girls would be fantastic.
Yeah, and of course yourself, as you mentioned, you were a former player in the league in the early days, moved into coaching. In terms of, I suppose, the makeup of the coaching fraternity within the league, and I use the word fraternity because it is very much a male-dominated field, only a handful of female coaches across the league. What's your own experience of being a woman in the league and coaching in the league, and how you're treated by the players and the opposing staff, I suppose?
It's had its ups and downs over the years. There's no point in saying any different. Sometimes, you do get some comments even still from from either sidelines or whatnot. But it's something that I've learned to deal with a lot better. I think 4 or 5 years ago, you tend to take everything to heart, and everything that goes against you, you kind of tend to take it personally. But I suppose that comes with age as well. A little bit older, that you just learn to deal with these things. It is what it is. It is getting better. It's few and far between, those difficult moments. But it's especially at DLR, just with Graham and John and everybody involved in the club. They're so focused on just getting good people in, whether it's male or female, it doesn't matter. They just want to create a good environment for coaches in general.
Yeah, in terms of, I suppose, that
It's
culture,
just
it's
mutual
important.
respect. Yeah.
It's important to see, I suppose, role models, and you're doing that. I know Mary Curtin is doing a similar role as the assistant manager down in Treaty, as one of the coaches in the first team staff in Treaty, and there's a few other females dotted around the league as well, actively on the coaching scene. I suppose in terms of the higher profile one, Lisa Fallon with Galway United men's side, would that be an ambition, or is there an ability to cross over from the women's league to the men's league as easy? Because Lisa, for example, never really coached in the women's national league here. She was in the League of Ireland with Cork or with Michael O'Neill in Northern Ireland before she moved into the British system for
Yeah.
women's football.
Look, I mean, you can never say never. I don't know if it's something I'd like to do personally. I just, I've always felt that being involved with the Women's National League from the start, seeing that grow and helping that progress in any way that I can over the last 10, 11 years, it's been a focus for me. And to see where it's at this year compared to the first year, even in terms of promotion and the support from the FAI and the new sponsors and everything like that, that's fantastic for me to see the quality of players, the difference in the teams now has, it's really, it's so much better. Every game is now competitive, so to see that over the last 10 years is fantastic. And it's kind of, I suppose, a passion of mine. Lisa's done a phenomenal job. Obviously, she's very respected within the men's game. So I think for anyone who wants to do that, I don't see why not. Would it be for me? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and in terms, I suppose, of the year ahead, how much can you prepare for a league that hasn't existed before? The player pool is a little bit disrupted because some have maybe dropped out of the game or chosen other sports. Some have moved on to senior squads. So teams that might have been strong at under 17, say 2 years ago, might not have the same pool of players to pick from this time around.
Yeah, that's the beauty of underage football, I suppose. Galway obviously were extremely strong in the first season. There's a lot of those players now have stepped up, and they're playing senior football. I think it's great to see that progression. But like you said, every year is going to be different with the underage leagues. Some teams will be stronger than others, and that'll swing and roundabout. So it's hard to know how it's going to pan out, but I expect all the teams are going to be very, very competitive. It's a very good pool of players, young players around the country now. So I just think it's great for the league itself.
And in terms of your own expectations for the team, for yourself, for the season ahead, what are the goals within your own camp?
I think if you ask the girls, it's always they want to win trophies, and it's very hard to tell them that that's not what they should be aiming for. Everybody likes winning, but for me, just to progress those players on now and get them stepped up into the first team and strengthen the first team squad, and just be part of that pathway. Obviously, the 17s are there. There's a lot of parent clubs now around the area coming through from under 16 level. So the pathway at the club is phenomenal, and it can only help the club progress.
Yeah, what you're doing off the pitch as well in terms of selling jerseys and kind of promoting that and creating that community feel, even if it's just a social media facade, it really draws you into the club, and you seem to do the social media end of things quite well up there in UCD or Belfield or DLR or whatever the moniker is this particular season. Laura, listen, I know with you at the helm, it's going to be a successful season for DLR, whatever that looks like, and whatever the goals you're looking to set for yourselves. And the very best of luck for you for the season. Hopefully we'll find out a bit more information on the U19 League relatively soon. And once we have that, we will bring it to the viewers and the listeners here on the Final Whistle podcast for the Women's National League. Laura, thanks for joining me. The best luck for the season. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks very much.
And so that, of course, leaves us just with the fixtures of the coming weekend to look at. Treaty United, they have a break, which is probably well-deserved after their exploits against Shells and Peamount in recent weeks. They'll enjoy their week off. But all of the other 8 teams in action, starting on Saturday afternoon, Shells versus Galway Women's FC, Peamount versus Cork, Wexford Youths host Bohemians, while DLR make the trip to Athlone. We might start with Shells and Galway, your own former side. It's a big ask for Galway to go to Shells, Talcott Park. It's intimidating at the best of times. Can they take anything back to Galway with them?
Massive task, like you said there, but of course I think we had a good win away to Shells a few years ago now at this stage, but I think Galway will go there, knowing or hoping they can get a result. And I think the week off will have done them good last week to regroup and try, put things in place. And, hopefully they can manage to get a result against Shells. I think it's interesting this week, the top 3 are all at home. So Galway, along with Cork and Bows, will have really difficult tasks, I think.
Yeah, of course, Rachel Kearns, Player of the Month for, we'll say March/April, first Player of the Month of the season. She was announced today as we're recording this, yesterday as people are listening to it. They'll be, I suppose, she's missing. She's picked up an injury on her ankle, so she might miss a game or two. She's already missed a couple. Big loss. Can Galway find the back of the net without her?
I think it is a massive loss. I mean, I suppose she's been missing for a game and a half, and Galway have lost that game and a half, I think 6-0. So, it is a big task, but I think Galway they do have players that can come in and do a job as well. So I think, although she did provide, most of the goals, obviously this season, I think they'll have, like that, they'll have known in advance of the game that she'll be out, unfortunately. But I think the player is ready to step in as well and, make an impact and hopefully then, contribute more, putting the ball in the back of the net because they've been doing, with the last game aside, Galway have actually been quite solid defensively so far.
Yeah, potentially be a very good game. I like the way both teams approach the just playing the game, so it should be good to watch for the neutrals at least. Although you have to fancy Shells to take all 3 points on offer. Cork City, they travel to Greenogue. Peamount in fine form, unbeaten so far. Big score for the first time really last weekend. Could Cork be in for something similar, or will they have tightened up a little bit at the back and Peamount have to go back to their first string to try and break through?
I think Cork will, obviously they'll have watched the game that Peamount have played last week against Athlone and maybe try to see how they can manage the game better and, be more solid defensively than Athlone were in the second half. And I think Cork, like we've already mentioned, they do have quality players, and I think they should be able to deal with Peamount's threat to an extent. And I think, they are quite good normally at game management as well. So they'll be looking to, given their place in the table, I think a draw would be a massive result for Cork. Were they to get it up in Peamount, would be a big upset. But like we previously said, it seems like Peamount are kind of finding their flow now, and like you said, with their so-called second string out for the last few weeks, those second string players now are really pushing to be first string players. So I think, it's all going well for Peamount, and I would imagine that it would be similar again this weekend coming. I couldn't see much past a Peamount win.
Yeah, now I say second string. One of that second string, so to speak, has over 100 caps for Ireland. So it's not exactly a second string side, given the strength in the Peamount United squad overall. Third game of the weekend, Wexford Youths and Bows. For me, this is the game I'm looking forward to the most. I think, again, more than the DLR Bows game last week, it's the one where it's probably the most level matched, and interesting to see how that's going to work out. I think Bows have started well. I know they've kind of fallen away in recent weeks, but I think this is an opportunity for them to really show that they have made a bit of progress. The fact that they're even remotely competitive in this fixture, given where the clubs finished last season, Bows at the bottom of the table, is still a credit to the work that's gone on with the club up there in the Oscar Traynor Centre.
I think Bows, definitely, they've improved a lot since last year, and they really have put in very good performances. Quite similar to Cork in a way, in that I don't think their league table would reflect that. And, last week they'll have gotten a lot of confidence, although not with the result, but with the performance against DLR. I think they'll approach it in quite a similar manner, in that they'll try to stay compact against the Wexford team, who we all know is a really dominant force, particularly going forward. And I think, if they can manage to hold out, and try stay in the game for as long as possible, who knows what might happen from a Bows point of view. But Ferry Carrick Park is a very difficult place to go and get a result, and Bows will be well aware of that as well.
Yeah, final game of the weekend, Athlone Town versus DLR Waves. Athlone have impressed in flashes over the last couple of weeks. Defensively, they've been fairly solid. I know I'm saying that after they shipped 6 goals at the weekend, but I think they kept Wexford scoreless for 80 minutes. They've put up a really solid performance in recent weeks against much higher ranked teams and kept them out for longer than probably people expected them to. If they can get that attacking third working in any way, shape or form, because they have players that can find the back of the net when they get opportunities, could DLR be in for a tough night? Physically as well as in terms of the actual football on the night?
I think so. Athlone are a very determined team, and like that, they're not afraid to kind of make the other team know that they're there as well. And like you just said, they have been good solidly defensively in patches in games, but not obviously for 90 minutes just yet. And I think they can take positives from like last weekend, only keeping the first 45, 50 minutes, keeping Peamount to only 1-0. They're going to try to see, okay, can they do this? It's quite similar against DLR, but for a longer time. And like you said, then it's obviously all about them trying to see, can they push on and, get a goal at the other end.
Absolutely. Well, all will be revealed over the weekend. Of course, you can catch up on all of these games and watch them live on loitv.io. I almost said watch LOI. That's a little bit confusing. It's LOI TV. All the games are free. You just need to join the site. I think you need to put in credit card details. I'm sure you all know this by now if you've been following the league, but you can follow all of the action, and we would encourage you to do so. Maeve, thank you so much for joining me again. I'm sure it won't be that long before we see you again on the show, and enjoy your week, and we might catch up with you again soon.
Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks a million. Talk to you all next week.